Good morning. Great to see you, VA. Welcome to another session of Ecosystem Engage, the Not So Daily Show. And I'm joined by my colleague, Tim Sheedy, who's our principal advisor based out of Sydney. Tim is a long-term analyst who's worked with a number of the leading analyst firms for decades and is now one of the foremost experts on AI. And VA, of course, is the CEO of Ramco Systems. Many of you would have dealt with him over the last couple of decades in different roles, in different leadership roles across some of the biggest IT services companies. But VA takes a lot of pride now in having created a very, very strong place for one of the leading technology product companies to come out of India. So welcome, VA. We're really
Thanks,
pleased to
Amit.
have you.
Thank you, Amit. Thanks for giving me the opportunity and reaching across to your audience and sharing whatever crazy thoughts that come to my mind. And
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I have learned interacting with VA is there's a lot of thoughts constantly colliding in that head, and that's what drives the innovation that Ramco brings to the market. And your ability to then articulate those thoughts and put some structure on that, VA, I think, is what makes it very special for your business. So, but look, before we get into the business aspect, I think the reality is, people talk about, the current situation being an economic crisis. Sure, it is. I mean, everyone's hurting. Every business is hurting. But I think the bigger challenge at the moment is that first and foremost, it's a humanitarian crisis. The economic crisis is only a fallout. I mean, my view is that this truly is a watershed moment, and it has so many implications, so much impact. And using one of your phrases, VA, when we caught up the last time, we're going to see decades of shift, crammed into a matter of weeks, right? And one of the biggest shifts we've seen is obviously the fact that we are unable to venture out. In some places, a little bit more relaxed. In some places, it's much more stringent. But in general, I think it's fair to say everyone in general is working from home, working remotely, and that does bring a number of challenges. Every business was not prepared for that. Obviously, we're all in the technology industry. We're well versed with remote working, but even then, the fact that you can't actually meet your colleagues for weeks and weeks is very different from what we've experienced before. And with all the challenges that are taking place at the moment, I wanted to get your sense, as a leader, I mean, what has been your focus? How have you managed the impact on people in terms of keeping them engaged, inspired, and motivated?
yeah, I think the initial reaction was doom and gloom, and then we decided to pick ourselves up, and then we all talked to each other and asked whether we cut down people in the company or some of us take big amount of pain and don't let the jobs go. So we decided to take a 25% cut. One of the first companies to have decided amongst the top management team in their salaries. Maybe it covers about a few hundred people in the company out of 2,000 or so. And we decided we won't let anybody go. There will be no formal people to let go. So save the jobs. The leadership takes the cut, leads by example, and in this time preserve the job. So that is the first decision we took. Second was whether we use this occasion to pivot and bring something new to the market. And so if you see, one of the products that came out of that was that thermal screening with facial recognition, a new touchless experience for an employee coming into the office. And along with that, many other things, by the camera feed measuring, safe distancing in office, coughing sound detected by in the office to see whether somebody needs to be sent home or is an unsafe person, contact tracing based on the data that comes into the company in terms of who all attended what all meetings and so on and so forth. So we decided to pivot quickly and start building some new products which will be relevant for the future workplace that we will have, what our customers will demand. The other was move on to a pure SaaS model. So use this occasion to again pivot to a pure SaaS model from license model. We had substantial revenue still coming from license. So we decided we can set the investors' expectation, being a listed company now, reset the expectations. So there's time to reset. So that's the reason you've seen my presentation. I call it reboot. It's a chance to make changes which would have been politically unacceptable in the company earlier. The investors' pressure would not have allowed us to shift so quickly over to the SaaS model. So all that, we could collapse it very quickly and use it to pivot to something new. We don't really know what is going to unfold. So there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty still in front of us. And but we think we'll need to be very agile, amoeba like, change the structure as the demand is changing and change the shape of ourselves and our company at a rapid pace to adapt to what is coming in our face. For us, fortunately, we were always a digital company because the leadership team is so distributed. The head office is in Chennai. I sit here. One of the presidents, Harsh, sits here. CTO sits here of the company. So we were pretty much distributed all over the world, and we had got used to using all the conferencing tools long back. So we were kind of ready for this. It didn't take us any time to get moving in. And generally, we keep ourselves technologically very updated and upgraded. For us, the touchless experience was there in the entire company all over the world about 3-4 years back. So this is not new to us. We just added thermal screening to it. So just to say that we think it's a moment for anybody to pivot now and do something very, very different coming in our face. For us, fortunately, we were always a digital company because the leadership team is so distributed. The head office is in Chennai. I sit here. One of the presidents, Harsh, sits here. CTO sits here of the company. So we were pretty much distributed all over the world, and we had got used to using all the conferencing tools long back. So we were kind of ready for this. It didn't take us any time to get moving in. And generally, we keep ourselves technologically very updated and upgraded. For us, the touchless experience was there in the entire company all over the world about 3-4 years back. So this is not new to us. We just added thermal screening to it. So just to say that we think it's a moment for anybody to pivot now and do something very, very different.
So could I actually ask, what's in terms of your customers? I know you've already been doing the offshore or the remote support services for probably forever, I'm guessing. But look, having written case studies for your organization in the past, one of the things you guys prided yourself on was sort of taking on the culture of the customer, basically, and sort of embedding yourself into that customer environment. Now that's a little bit harder now. Now your people aren't sitting there in the customer office across the table from them anymore. So interested in knowing sort of how that's changed and how you're embracing that change and opportunity.
Yeah, I think the huge paradigm shift that has taken place is you need people on site to get the work done. So that is something everybody now believes there's no such requirement. So that makes it a lot more easier. Earlier, the first worry we would have if we get a contract in Spain, for example, was how will the visas come? We'll scramble to go across to Big Four and get the visas and 4 months lead time for starting the project. So all that is gone now. The customer understands we don't need to be here. For us, it's tremendous flexibility. We don't need to be running around to work on permits, and we can bring the expertise to the fore on every situation. So we call the model, we named it as Coffee. It was born from Center of Financial Excellence, but then it has become COHE, Center of HR Excellence. So all experts can be brought to bear on a problem from a remote location, and now we have started giving 2 prizes. If you want the luxury of having people talk to you face to face, this is the price. If you don't want that luxury, the price is say less than half. And tell you what, most customers don't want to have the luxury of having a face-to-face conversation, and they're happy to go with less than half the price. And we are able to cut short the time also massively for implementation because we are not worried about the logistics of the whole thing anymore. And everybody is brought to the table together. Otherwise, if you were to do something for a client in Hong Kong, they're waiting for the Chinese colleagues to come, and it's convenient for them to come, and so on and so forth. So all that is gone now. So the convenience, non-convenience doesn't really matter. Who is on leave doesn't matter. not on leave and so on. Everybody can come for an hour or so. So that's a big change. That's a big shift.
So can I just ask you on that another question? You talked about pivoting, and now Ramco is not a new business. I mean, you do have legacy parts of your business, right? I mean, your aviation MRO solutions are probably used worldwide by the top aviation companies. I think that's been the case for the last 3 decades, right? And the same goes with your ERP business. But to bring that change and bring about the responsiveness that you showed with this thermal monitoring solution, which was really simple. You plugged it into the payroll attendance systems, and you're able to monitor employees. And the solution you brought in, and I saw the release where you partnered with the Singapore government to roll it out very efficiently. Now, what is your personal approach to innovation? How do you bring that sort of immediate shift to switch and bring out something that rapidly? Because if I remember correctly, you launched that service in mid-March, and the fact that by mid-March, some of the countries had not even shut down. So
what I say is, I call it the weak signal theory. You see emerging noises very far off somewhere of something happening, which is interesting. So we just pick it up, and I read a lot. So I read a couple of hours before I go to sleep, and next morning I catch up with the CTO in the coffee shop, Dimbula opposite our office, Australian coffee shop where I like to enjoy my coffee. We sit for 45 minutes, and I pour all my crazy ideas on the napkin to him. And ideas are generally quite mad in nature. It's not every problem that he can solve, but our team somehow that we have in the office are a bunch of people, very young team, other than the CTO himself, very young team, 20 something. They have a habit of not going home till such time the problem is solved. So max it takes is 48 hours, worst case scenario 72 hours, and they have something working. And one thing is they have total freedom. They have already bought $50,000 of devices without any permission, anything. They use their personal credit card, they order, they experiment, they try out, and we force trial on each of our employees. We promptly disable the previous system and say, you got to use this system only, there's no other choice. So we installed the thermal screening system on the door, and it was giving widely different temperature every time would come in. So we learned a lot how to adjust the humidity of the atmosphere that makes it change the distance from the camera and so on and so forth. So lots and lots of things we tried on ourselves, and about 7-8 days we had the presentation, we had the launch. From the date I poured my idea on the coffee shop to him, and we have the quite confidence to launch without having the product ready. So we call it perception ahead of time. So we create the perception in the market that we are ready with this while we are working behind the screens, but we are quietly confident that we can make it happen. And then we started shipping devices, have gone all over the world, US, Spain, UAE, Jordan, Australia, Philippines, all over the world. The devices have been shipped, installed at customer locations, and we're finding good enough interest there. And the process, we started scanning the market for everything else. I started giving more and more difficult problems. Okay, use the regular camera feed, find the distance between the people. Find from the cuff if somebody has COVID. So there are data sets available from Cambridge University, which we tried. It was 55-60% and so on. So that's how we get the innovation going.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and wanted to pose a question to Tim, just to get that conversation going. Tim, and we've talked about it. You've been presenting almost every other day on some webinar or sessions, but wanted to take a softer stand at a broader level, at a high level. The sectors that we feel will be impacted the most in this scenario need to change rapidly, or even pivot, as VA mentions. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, look, I think there are some obvious ones. Travel, obviously, the retail sector. But look, whilst it's hard to predict what the mid to long-term outcomes of COVID-19 are going to be. And, there are the optimists and pessimists out there at the moment, and it doesn't seem to be much, in the middle. I'd actually argue that, the whole property market, globally is going to shift, right? If, and like, to an extent, we know this is going to happen. Like, we know that more people are going to be working at home. Like, I'll give you an example. Actually, I hope he doesn't mind me using this, but I was chatting with my younger brother yesterday, and he's got a very senior role at a very iconic Australian organisation, and a very innovative Australian organisation. But he was one of these people that, like he never believed in working at home, right? He thought that if you're working at home, you're at a cafe or you're surfing or you're sleeping, etc. That was his view of working at home. He had this really traditional view, and myself and my elder brother have been working at home for the most of the last 15 years, and I think he thinks that we don't really work. And so I was chatting with him yesterday, and he sort of said, "Look, I finally get this idea that working at home can be a real thing." Like he still sort of says, "Well, you have to manage every individual," and he's right. You do have to. That's what a manager's job is, right? Manage every individual in their team, and make sure that they're all productive. But he's sort of got this idea that he doesn't need to be in the office, and he was someone who was spending 2/3 of his time flying around the world, to meet people, because he thought you had to sort of meet them face to face to get this real human connection. And he's starting to see this idea that, you don't have to anymore. And he's saying that, he thinks he'll be working at home 2 or 3 days a week going forward, and a lot of his team will be. So that makes you question the whole, real estate market for business, right? That, do you need the space that you think you need, right? And then you flip that round to the retail space and go, well, and restaurants, go, well, do you need more space? Because is social distancing actually going to become just a common part of every behavior, and every restaurant, as opposed to crammed in lots of tables in a small space, will actually be bigger spaces with fewer tables in them, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, I think we're going to see this reshuffling of that property space. I think, the way humans interact, the way we collaborate with each other, the way we all document processes, because we're not going to be working next to each other in the office all day, every day, is all going to change. And that's going to change every industry. Like the software industry is going to change. Something that I think is a topic that I assume we're going to move on to. That's the VA, I know you're a big advocate of, is around automation. So I'm seeing, when organizations are trying to solve a problem today, they go straight to the idea of automation, right? What we used to do, and when our worth as a manager was measured on how large our team was and how many people we managed, when we had a business problem, a lot of the time we'd hire someone to solve that problem, right? You even look at automation functions in business. We hired an automation team, an AI team. We hired a CX team. Like, all these problems we've had, we've hired a team to do it. And now the go-to, when we're sitting at home in our home offices and we're not thinking about, the size of our team anymore, we're thinking about just solving the problem. I think we're going straight to this automation thing, right? Where we go, how can we automate this fix versus I'm going to go to market, hire someone. And that, the flow on of that is the employment market, right? Of the number of people that we need within our businesses. And it's interesting, that was something that my brother was talking about too. He's already seeing that their business, he thinks, is just going to be much leaner going forward, because they had a lot more resources than they actually needed. They've got rid of a lot of them now, all the contractors, etc., and they're still achieving all the same outcomes, right? So businesses are rethinking, many different areas and spaces at the moment.
So thanks, Tim. I think that's a great way to segue into the core theme of the session on AI and automation. So, Via, I know you're a big fan of automation as well.
Yeah.
Do you see this as a time to really seize the moment towards automation for businesses?
Yeah, so I think there is not a better time than this to carry out transformation. And the reason I have not used the title of my slides as transformation is because I think it's time to reboot. rethink everything, including the business model completely. For me, aviation, it may be the SaaS movement for any capital intensive industry. Already a tractor company in India pivoted to selling tractors on rentals within weeks of the COVID striking, within weeks. That quick was the pivot that took place. So all capital intensive industry, it may be the SaaS movement. Those who adopt to it very quickly will be the ones who will be in the right place. Like Cisco said that I'm willing to defer 95% of the cash payment for the equipment that are going to buy from me, provided you buy the latest stuff 2 years later. So people will have to take some very, very big decisions, and aviation industry included. And I think automobile will be hit bigger than anybody else. Retail, I think, is in very serious trouble. It's a great movement to, one is structurally change 10 times the cost structure, not 10%. To drive home the point, just to make sure that the message sinks in, I sometimes make some very impossible statements in the company. So I just recently created 2 slides, and one of them led you need to enter data only if the sun rises from the west. Just to challenge the team that almost every piece of data anybody is going to enter can be predicted. I'm that much of a fan of what the AIML brings to the table. And so that's a way of challenging that. One of our customer has increased the revenue by 55 times without adding a single person in the whole equation. And now the latest bunch of change that he wants from us is machine will select the supplier automatically and raise the PO, no touch at all. Just imagine. So I asked the CEO, how come and why? He says, I'm in trading business. The volumes are small. The margins are small. The volumes are very large. I need to be as automated as I get 50 times the volume of revenue without adding a single person. And the amount of automation they have done is, I was telling my team that we are, cutting our own feet because they had 24 licenses from us. And if I look at his business, he may not even want to have more than 2 licenses because everything runs automated. There's no human touch at all anywhere. So there's a chance to have a relook at things. And the moment you look at incremental things, people just want another pop-up, give me this information at this point of time. When you rethink the whole thing, there's a reason I have a belief, eliminate the process, don't improve the process. The moment you say I'm going to eliminate the process and not going to improve it, then it changes the equation completely. So the shift has to be very radical, and your team will shift radically different only if you ask them 10 times. If you ask them, give me 15-20% improvement, then they will make you go around in circles.
So could I actually ask a question there? Well, let's use that trading example, company as an example. What did they do? Like how easy was it to get rid of the processes? Because I think this is for a lot of businesses, they don't know where to start. They don't know how much data that they need perhaps to start with to do the learnings. They don't know what the next steps in that engagement sort of looks like.
I think it's in the head of people, or it has to be driven from the top. This person driving it has to be madly obsessed about the whole thing and have a very firm belief in it. You need to be a convert. I have challenged people so many times. I said, can you prove that that you can raise a better PO than our AI engine can raise? And not a single person in my company has challenged me, the human being can raise a better PO. I said, I will take 6 months old backup. I will raise the purchase orders with the machine. And you prove to me that you had raised better purchase order. I'm giving the challenge. Not even a single customer is willing to accept that challenge. I said, I will take previous months. You keep sending me purchase requisitions that you were sending, and I'll raise the POs automatically. I will approve the payments. You have to have courage to let the payments go to the bank without anybody seeing it. That courage is required. And trust the system that if any anomalous payment is going, it will pick it up. Anything large amount is going, you still don't trust it, it will pick it up. And people, I asked the CEO question on company in Adelaide. Maybe you get to do a case study for them. You're doing this digital transformation for them. From the time purchase requisition to the raising of PO, I asked the CEO, how many days do you think it takes? He says, must be 6 to 7 days. I said, do you know that you take 43 days? And at each step, I showed him, oh, no wonder the mechanics are complaining so much that the material doesn't come on time. And I said, you know what? How many days you take to approve a PO? 26 days, you personally. Because each manager drives their importance from how people are chasing their, sir, please approve. Okay, give me this question to this answer. Oh, tell me this, and so on and so forth. So we show to them the number of waiting days in the company were 38 million waiting days, people waiting on each other to approve. The culture of approval, 6 levels of approval for a purchase order. I mean, based on values, they were different. So what they were reaching the CEO was 1% or something. Now the shift in the mind has to happen that I don't need this. And for that to happen, all information should be available on the spot, real time. So that means the pilot will fill up an electronic flight bag. They will key in the flight information on the iPad that we give them. It won't be coming on a paper to Adelaide to be data entered and available 48 hours later. The mechanics are keying in everything that they're doing on an iPad that is given to them. So everything has to be real time. All information has to be real time. Ideally, it should be fed by IoT. Ideally, it should be imputed automatically. Like in our company, recently we just launched timesheets which we impute based on AIML. It fills up the complete timesheet, 5-6 lines and so on and so forth. It pretty much 80% of the company's timesheet it fills. It predicts the task also and the activity also. So you need to have an innate belief that, and that is driven by sheer faith or belief, insane belief in it. You're driving it like mad, then only it's going to happen. And everything else needs to come around. You can't do partial automation. You can't have one function going because you will be lacking in information because you don't know the stock you have unless everything is real time and online. Everything has to be real time.
Tim,
so that's my belief in the whole thing.
And Tim, what's your view on what clients should expect with respect to actually building these intelligent systems?
Look, I think actually, clients should expect that their applications provider should be providing these capabilities out of the box, right? That I think they should expect that it's not something that they perhaps pay any more for, a smart application versus a dumb application. I'd argue that every application should be intelligent, right? That's as VA said, we can get rid of a huge amount of data entry, right at the beginning. Well, as he said, you can actually get rid of the process, right? So there's no data entry in the first place. And slowly but surely, we are seeing some organizations start to change those expectations. They're going to the market asking for these, completely sort of automated capabilities. I think there's still some confusion about how quickly that can be delivered, right? About how quickly the system can learn. Is it I run it for a year and then I get the data and then, and then I can start to automate those processes or get rid of those processes? Or is there something that I can get out of the box or out of the cloud, up front, as soon as it's implemented? I think there's still a lot of confusion around that particular capability, but I think the market's changing, right? I don't see people talking about AI anymore. Like AI has nearly disappeared as a topic. It's fascinating. It went from the hottest topic in IT to not talked about at all because now it's just expected. Right now, everything has to be intelligent, right? Now we want learning at every point in the process. We want Zoom calls that can automatically put virtual backgrounds up for us and learn where our head is and where the room is behind us, right? Like AI should be embedded in every little thing that we do. I know Teams, for example, is starting to have the ability to transcribe every call, right? So I can search afterwards, and it just automatically, that call might automatically just go into a knowledge base and add to the knowledge of the organization, and then add to the learnings of that machine and add to the intelligence of the organization, right? These are, I think, the new expectations. And as I said, like I think it's only the few percent that are asking for it today, but that percent's growing quickly. I'd argue some of the traditional vendors are dragging their feet on it a little bit, as they, I guess, always have, because that's how their customers work. But I certainly think it's coming, and I certainly think that the whole application space is going to change very quickly over the next 3, 4, 5 years. Hopefully next week, right? That's the speed I want, right? As you say, VA, this is the chance to reset expectations, right? Do it now. Don't wait 3, 4, 5 years for your vendor. But unfortunately, too many do wait for their vendor to respond.
We've talked about resetting expectations. Tim, you referred to out of the box solutions, right? Applications out of the box. How smart can these applications be out of the box or out of the cloud, for example, VA?
I think the applications, as Tim mentioned, they need to have certain historical data. If you can feed historical data, they can be smart from day one. But if you don't have data history, they will need to learn, because AI ML thrives on learning historical data. So I think as long as you have historical data, they can be smart on day one. And the way we are thinking of the pricing model is to just take a percentage of the benefit the customer gets. And we are pivoting away from the model of pricing per user now. So pricing per user is going away. And recently in Melbourne, Tim, we have priced one of the logistics companies based on the percentage of the benefit that they will derive from our application. And the CEO of that company was so enamored by the set of slides that I shared with him that he's using those slides to sell to his customers. And he's using the same terminology that we are using. He's trying to snag some very large global accounts, and he's not talking logistics with them. He's talking of transformation of the entire process, in which he's trying to predict what they are going to ask me, what demand they're going to place on me. That ship that many Campbell's soup from this warehouse to Woolies at this place on this date. So every day something similar happens. Why should I wait for your order? Why should I plan that trucks when your order comes? The sequence right now is orders come to the logistics companies. I plan my trucks based on that. Then the entire planning process, the day gone, and then I will in the evening tell you when I'm going to pick your shipment and send it. 98% of the demand stays same. So why can't you provide for 2% wastage and plan before the day starts? And just inform everybody my truck is coming at this time to this pickup and so on and so forth, and now allow real-time adjustment of all that and so on and so forth. I think the key thing is, like Amazon has done in stores, it predicts what a typical household will order this week, and that all those items are stored together. It's no longer a rack full of shampoos, a rack full of soap, a rack full of diapers, a rack full of toilet rolls, a rack full of bread, and so on and so forth. So what a typical household will order is stored in a single rack in the warehouse, because it's the most efficient way of picking. There's a lot of heuristic involved in this. There's a lot of, if I were to say, quantum AI involved, and quantum AI, you will hear a lot about it in going future, because all this requires a kind of computing power which we can't even imagine. To be able to predict that how many bottles of milk will be picked between 7 and 8 p.m. on a Thursday, on a Wednesday, or how many coffees will be ordered if there's a match going on in the Melbourne Stadium from this particular store versus and so on. So forth. It requires time series data. It requires lots and lots of stuff. And that means tremendous amount of computing power to bear. And as quantum AI becomes mainstream, all that becomes very, very possible now. So I think the biggest change from this COVID crisis is that the digital companies will grow much faster. The inequality amongst the corporate systems will become very high. So the Googles, the Amazons, and the Microsofts of this world, the Adobes of this world, will become really, really mind-bogglingly large. And the companies which are not digital, which are dragging its feet, especially the ERP, traditional ERP companies, I see will have an IBM-like time. IBM had an opportunity to pivot. So same thing, aviation industry. If I was Airbus, I would move to sharing a percentage of passenger revenue rather than trying to sell a A350 or a A380 or something like that to open the market, because that may be the model to shift. It's a SaaS movement for everybody. My belief is this: there's a lot of industries move to the SaaS model right now. If they can't shift, they will struggle. They will downsize. They will eliminate people. They will do various things, but in the end, they are just preparing for a slower death. Nothing else.
Well, and actually, very early on in the pandemic, I did write a piece targeted governments saying that if you want to make some investments that are going to get the economy moving, then actually target some digital investments. Make it really easy for small, medium businesses to build digital presences. Because as you said, VA, the companies that are doing really well at the moment are the ones with a really great digital presence, right? And you've seen it. Like, look at, I'm a member of 3 or 4 local Facebook groups in my area. And I look at the restaurants and cafes that are doing well in the area, and they're the ones that had the app, that had the great web or digital presence beforehand, and then there's the ones that aren't doing well, and they're out on Facebook, showing an image of their menu saying, "Please call us with an order," right? You're going this digitalization, it's all the way up at the top end, right? But it's down to the very small end too. The organizations that have made the digital switch and the small business are the ones who are going to survive this too and come out stronger. So I was hoping that that governments around the world would put some of their spend into this digital space, because as a government, you don't just want the economy to keep going or to not tank completely. You actually want it to come out stronger than it did, right? You want to start to achieve some of the goals that you set previously. And like during the global financial crisis in Australia, when the Rudd government had a particular spend around putting insulation in people's roofs, that was to get some spend going in the economy, but also to meet some of the reduction in greenhouse gases targets that they were setting. So I'm going, well, wasn't this time the chance to actually get some spend going in the economy, but B, help businesses actually come out of this stronger? So I'm pretty disappointed that I haven't seen any government really target any of their spend towards digital. And as I said, this was the chance, right, to do it. If we want our businesses to come out stronger, surely we want them to be able to deal with digital better, because at the moment, every business in Australia is 100% digital, and the same in India, and the same in nearly any other country around the world, right?
I think you're very, very right. And I'll just possibly, Amit, if you want, if you permit, I'll introduce a concept called anticipatory computing, one of my most favorite. I talked a little bit about earlier as well. So anticipatory computing is the local neighborhood shop sending you a message. Should I send you your usual coffee at 9:15 that you normally have at home? No ordering. That's what I call anticipatory computing.
Right, and on top of that, I'd argue it turns up on a drone at 9:15 a.m.
Yeah, nothing like it. And I think, Tim, you raised a very, very interesting point. And I would see that the governments should support small businesses, and they should help them become digital. Like they should possibly pay if they're going to use Shopify to become e-commerce, they should pay the cost of the Shopify for them. They should pay the cost of the implementation. They should help them pay the money for setting up an Instagram storefront on Facebook, and so on and so forth. So I think if you are not going to destroy communities with this change, you have to level the playing field with the big guys. Otherwise, the big guys will be that's it. That's the end of the equation for anybody who has a small business. Howsoever much, Mr. Sheedy, how are you this morning? Kind of stuff. I don't think you're going to shell a whole lot of money for that anymore. So I think there's a duty towards to not cause social upheaval. Is a duty towards that. Is what I feel.
Yeah.
Well, and I argue that it's the small companies who push the large ones to innovate, right? So if we come out of the back end of this pandemic with a lot of these small companies having shut down or gone bankrupt or not innovating at the same rate, that means that the larger organizations aren't going to be innovating either, which impacts everyone. It impacts your business, our business, the whole customer experience, right? If they're not feeling a need to drive change themselves.
No, it's the comfortable oligopoly, if you were to say, like what in India we had with Airtel, Vodafone, and Idea, and so on. They have adjusted to each other, and comfortably they were living like the Qantas and the Virgin were living, and so on, until some disruption happens, and then Jio came and changed the model completely. And now Jio is saying, I'm not in telecom business at all. I'm in a business of having that many connections globally, and I'm going to use them for shopping, for kirana stores, for purchasing, and so on. Change the game completely. So it's a matter of how you think what your business is. if you think your business is telecom, the only thing you will do is from digital transformation is trying to improve the efficiency of your telecom business. How quickly can you raise the bill? How quickly can somebody order a TV channel? How quickly can they increase the bandwidth, blah, blah, and so on and so forth? How frictionless can it be? Let me put it this way. But if you're pivoting to the different business model, then you say, I know that many customers, I can connect, send messages to them. What other businesses can I do with this connections that are going? And that's what Geo has done, I think. And the only guys who will give Amazon a very tough time in India are going to be these guys, because they have picked up a very different model. And I guess the politicians have no option but to support them, because they are preserving the local shop in their model.
I think in this new sort of in this new paradigm, you're going to see the whole focus from government. First of all, I think the entire architecture will change, or will need to change. If they're not doing it already, they need to. So I think to both your points, it needs to go from this whole old adage of even smart cities will probably come down to smart communities. How do you enable those smart communities? Because it's going to come down to keeping essential services running for citizens, but at the same time making sure that you're also able to get citizens and businesses to keep thriving. How do they shift? And that'll only happen if they bring it down to those smart communities level. I mean, that's kind of my view on that.
I think Tim also raised a very important point, which kind of got buried somewhere, and I will just bring it up, is that AI should be, I have a slide in which I show a piece of toast. And I say that AI should be like melted butter, not visible on the toast, but you can see the impact of it. So when a small business is used, when a 70-year-old running a coffee shop uses, they get the benefit. They are not asked to relearn, or they are not asked to clear a course on data science or something, or become tech savvy. It should be as intuitive, as simple as that. In fact, somebody raised a question in our company that we need to be writing better user manuals. I said, which era are you talking of? Which user manual did you use when we all switched to Teams? I think the entire company shifted to Teams overnight. What manual did we use? Nothing. That's it. And so the word has to be. It's a very, the technology to become all pervasive, all like a melted butter. It has to be absolutely simple enough to use, as if you're lifting a cup of coffee and drinking it. It's nothing more complicated. And that's where the thing about conversational computing comes in. I think it's not too far. It's pretty close. The speed at which semantics are being recognized, the intent is recognized in the tone of the voice, and so on and so forth. So we are not very far from conversational computing. Give my coffee extra hot, blah, blah, blah. And no need to enter any business. We're not entering, that's it. That entry is done.
Yeah. So, with the things you both have talked about in the last 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to get Tim to just close off the session, with his view on what you and we have talked about. You talked about anticipated computing. You talked about conversational computing, a whole bunch of other things. Tim, how would you distill down to what the application of the future is going to look like?
Look, I'd argue that there isn't going to be an application of the future. That there's just going to be a smart box somewhere. Written in reality, it'll be a smart cloud somewhere that anticipates needs of customers, anticipates the supply chain requirements, and that can quickly go out there and create new connections, find new customers, find new suppliers, find ways to pay those suppliers. I think it's going to be a lot of machines talking to each other in the background. And let's take, for example, a payment system, right? Today you might, as a business, you might take Visa card and MasterCard and PayPal. And then these new Chinese Alipay, et cetera, have come out, and you have to integrate with those systems, right? It's something that you have to do as a business. And tomorrow there might be another payment platform that comes out of India or Iran or Iraq or somewhere around the world, somewhere in Africa, that you might want to sell to a customer who just wants to pay with that payment system, but you don't want to have to integrate that with your business. And you're going, why can't these systems talk to each other? Why can't my system go out and integrate into that in the back end? Why can't those two systems talk to each other and just make it work out how they're going to send money to me and how I'm going to send orders to them? Like, I don't need a human to do that. And if you think, if I can do that, which you can do that, right? That's it. That's not that hard today. If I can do that, then I can do that with my supply chain. I can do that with my customers and everything. Like I actually think that the biggest challenge for applications vendors going forward is sort of making that transition from selling something that as you like. I like what you said, VA, about the processes going away. What an application does today is make a process electronic and sometimes automate some of that process. Well, what happens that day that the process goes away? You don't need the application anymore, right? If its job was just to automate that process, then you don't need the application. So what is the opportunity for those application vendors? I think for many organizations, it's going to be a relatively slow transition from that current system to some smart box somewhere that gets rid of a huge amount of humans, gets rid of a huge amount of the thinking and decision making, because the decisions are made before the customer even knows a lot of the time, right? That, as you say, that anticipatory computing concept. That's where for a long time, I believe that's where the applications market has to go, right? I think it's going to be the biggest shift in IT over the next 10, 15 years.
Absolutely.
I just don't think, for a lot of us, we're not going to know it happens, because I think it's going to happen in stages. I think one day we're going to wake up and go, gosh, do you remember the days when we ran these big clunky ERP systems and we needed teams of people to fill in data, etc. Sorry, VA, to cut you off.
No, I think you are absolutely right. You touched upon many topics actually, and I would classify them into a precursor to blockchain and a precursor to Bitcoin, and a single universal currency being applicable, whatever it is, be it Bitcoin, be it anything else. And all these are precursors because APIs are saying my plumbing is different, your plumbing is different. Let's come together, pay me. Let me see how my railway plumbing fits into your this thing, and all the effort that goes into it. All that will not be required. And I think the transition from your format to my format will take in real time. I don't think there is any intermediary step that will be taking place. So somebody from Africa is there. The translation from their format to this format will be really automated in the process. Yeah. So you are absolutely on the ball, and I think all that stuff that we talk of API and API economy is one level of friction which should go away, either with a blockchain and or it may go away with some kind of universal currency, or the standards may stay different, and a real-time translation of standards that will take place on the run without anybody knowing what happened in the background. So each person saying my PO looks like this is not a workable solution. And if at all your solution PO looks like this, it'll be converted in real time to what somebody else's PO looks like without any human intervention in between out there. And that's a reality happening. And some of that, the company that I told increased 50 times stuff, they use a platform called Aero Exchange, which converts suppliers' process to customers and customer processes to supplier, customers' POs to format in the supplier will understand. So all they do is the format exchange. And that's a consortium of 18 airlines which has come together and formed a body so that the interaction can take place automatically at a very rapid pace without each other's format being understood or APIs being there or something like that.
So, BA, we've talked about a lot of things, and I wanted to get a sense from you on how are you and your teams changing the conversation with your customers?
I think what we realized is if we play the traditional game, we will keep losing to the SAPs, Oracle, Workdays, ADPs, and so on and so forth. So we decided that we will change the game and we will not fight the same battle. It depends upon what you're suited for. If you're going to a wrestling match with a sumo wrestler, you're gonna get beaten to the ground in no time. So we decided that if it is a sumo wrestler on the other side, we will have a battle on the racetrack. We will run. We will not be in the wrestling match. And how to shift the battleground is, instead of selling an ERP, instead of selling a feature, we go around with a conversation on how will help you improve your EBITDA margins, improve your processes 10 times. So the conversation is with the CFOs, conversation with the CEOs, conversation is with the private equity guys is the most relevant conversation that we have. because they're all looking at improving performance rapidly of a company. Wherever the private equity is in, the conversations have just gone so well is unbelievable, because they are very interested in driving straight to the point of how do I drive much higher returns. So that's what we have been training a sales team on, showing the image of a sumo wrestler with a small guy, and then showing the racetrack, change to the racetrack. And then the likes of SAPs and Oracles find difficult to compete with us, because their sales team is trained on selling traditional user licenses and what's your current spend and so on and so forth. And we have started charging customers based on the benefits delivered, not on necessarily the traditional licenses. So that's a game-changing thing. And this COVID-19 has given us a great time to pivot ourselves to that model, so that we don't have to explain to our investors that why your suddenly revenue dipped, because we moved away from license to this model. So that's what I'm saying. It's a time to reset. Time to reset all thinking. Time to reset the way we implement. Time
Good
to
point.
reset what we sell, how we sell, even the products we sell. So it's a time to reset the entire. So my second last slide in my presentation is rethink. And the last slide is create your future from your future, not your past. It's a very profound slide. It essentially says if you are going to create future from your past, you're going to incrementally improve it. So create the future from the future and not from the past. It's a very difficult concept to understand, but it is a very, very powerful concept for today's world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Tim, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I sort of love this idea of changing the whole conversation around ERP. You know, there's so much momentum with, you know, SAP and Oracle in the market, right? That it's hard to get off them. You know, organizations have spent millions, sometimes billions of dollars, right, on these ERP systems and the extended systems with some of the bigger vendors. So I really do love that idea of changing the conversation, talking about business benefits, you know, profit, speed to market, customer outcomes, etc., as what you're actually selling, because that, you know, that just corresponds with what the people that you're speaking to are trying to drive themselves, right? The challenge always with ERP, and this isn't a criticism of SAP or Oracle, or any of the other players. The challenge always with ERP was taking that piece of technology and making it do something good for the business and drive these outcomes. And we know, you know, we've seen failure after failure after failure in this space, that many of them haven't delivered on all of the promises. Oh, you know, I'm not saying they've all been failures, right? But many of them haven't delivered on all the promises that they set out front. So, you know, making the promise around those business outcomes and focusing an implementation around delivering those business outcomes versus here's a piece of software, you know, the rest of it's up to you. Which is where many software implementations start and stop, right? So look, I think it's a great thing you're doing, and I guess I wish you the best of luck.
I want to thank Tim Sheedy, our principal advisor based out of Sydney, always ahead of time. And so thank you, Tim, for joining this session. And of course, Virender Aggarwal, better known as VA in the industry. It's become very evident, VA. There's a reason why you're able to drive some of that innovation, if I can distill it. I know for a fact that there's a number of business leaders in the industry who moved on to other companies, leading other companies, who have worked and learned from you, and they regard you very highly from a leadership style perspective. And at the same time, I think your ability to get into the depths of things and doodle and spend your spare time. I know VA spends most of his spare time on programming logic, and so I can see where some of that innovation stems from, and I think you empower the team very well. So thank you for that, and we look forward to more sessions. And good luck, gentlemen. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you both soon once things ease up a little bit.